Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Metaminute. I think it's episode 5 we're at. Last week we had the first part of the Halloween event. As we've talked about in the last episode, which isn't on YouTube at the moment, but that's another matter. We thought it was a bit underwhelming, to be honest. We didn't have too much stuff. It's just basically another themed week with a certain set of dinosaurs. But this week is quite interesting. This week is definitely I can't see how anyone would argue last week was better than this week. We are getting Indominus Rex, Indoraptor on the weekend, 6 attempts on Rex. That's not bad either. We got an assortment of strike events, and we had or we already had one, but we're going to have in total 2 one-step epic strikes, and I think there was like a third epic strike, but I don't have the schedule with me at the moment. I'll look it up real fast. So today with me is just Dwebble. Last episode we had Rebecca as well. She's not available today. If you guys didn't watch that one's unfortunately down. But anyways, let's get into this. So this week's Halloween, we have obviously better strikes and better weekly dinos. So how do you feel about that, Dwebble?
Like you said, it's definitely an improvement on last week. I don't even remember what last week was. Oh, it was the Crocs and
Yeah.
pinning strike stuff. Okay. Yeah, it was so like not worth that I normally I would remember a week later, but definitely better with the chance at legendary and unique DNA. Um Still not super impressed. It's the first big holiday really since launch, and it's another themed week. Whereas I feel like this should have been a time for them to push and do something new.
Yeah, for sure. And I just checked the schedule. We are also having a third epic strike. It's a cunning one. Which one's a cunning one? Is that the Monolophosaurus, the Dilophosaurus one? I think that's it.
Yep, that's all
Yeah,
the distractors and
yeah. Oh,
Mole and
that's not
those fun
bad.
guys.
Would have preferred maybe a power up, but cunning is probably the next best one, maybe. But anyways, that aside, yeah. Last week was so bad. It was Gryposuchus and Saccharixes. That was the first week ever I just totally skipped. I didn't go out for either Grypo or Saccharixes. I didn't get a single one, but also I was super busy with my midterms and school stuff, so didn't really have the time, even if I wanted to get them, I guess. Well, maybe I could have squeezed out a little bit of time if it was something important like Anki or Sinoceratops, but, Grypo, Sarcoryxes, no chance. And this week, yeah, I guess, definitely, obviously, it's an improvement, but yeah, it's still a bit, underwhelming for me. We had a really, um, we had a bit of an argument the other day in mod chat about this week's not this week's dino, just one attempt on Indominus Rex and one attempt on Indoraptor versus say the one of the better weekly events, which is the 15 attempts on Triceratops and Ankylosaurus. And I was in the camp of, I think the 15 attempts on Ankylosaurus and Sinoceratops is better than one attempt on Indoraptor and Indominus Rex. And it's mostly because, I mean, it's just one attempt on Indoraptor and Indominus Rex. It's not going to unlock them for most people, I'd imagine, unless you are super good, then, congratulations. But yeah, 15 attempts on Sino and Anki, which are really, really uh, rare comparison to Rex and Velociraptor. You don't see them often. They're really important. They make some of the best dinos in the game. And Indoraptor is good, obviously, but it's quite easy to obtain outside of the weekly events, unlike obviously Ankylosaurus and Sinoceratops. I personally haven't seen a single Ankylosaurus since the update. I might be super unlucky, but I also don't go to local for that often. So yeah, I personally thought probably the 16 or 15 attempts on Sino and Anki would be better. I wouldn't say it's fitting for Halloween, but just in terms of which one's better, generally, I think those are better. How about you, Double?
I think it kind of depends on what level you're at. Like you said, Indo is pretty accessible as far as uniques go,
Mm-hmm.
but the people who don't have it yet, I feel like a chance to dart it, it's much better for those people who are started working towards it and they're going to be able to finish it after the starting session,
Mm-hmm.
or the people who've just created it and there may be possible to get a level up off of it during this event, more so than people like us who's had Indo for months at this point. I would definitely prefer darting the Ankies and the Sinos myself, but like I said, I can go out every night and get velos and find Rex every day, but I don't have that same luxury with Ankylosaurus and Sinoceratops at all. Even popping epic sense, I tend to get more Rex than I get local epics, I feel like. So
Yeah. At first, I was in the camp of probably those who just created Indoraptor. They'd probably want this event more. But then after think about it, like Indoraptor level 21 to 22, and I don't want to seem like it's not a lot of work. It is work, but it's just 100 DNA. That's not that much in comparison to how much you need to create it. And I think for lower level players, if you're darting Indominus Rex and Indoraptor, you're not gonna create it. Like they're both really hard to create dinos. And if you don't create it, you just have useless DNA sitting there. Well, if you did have a Sinoceratops or Anki 15 attempts, that could get you a Sino or Anki and get it up quite a few levels. Those are really decent standalone epics. Even probably are both even usable still in Badlands, high Badlands even, if you have them at a decent level. And if you are really close to either of their four hybrids, those are really good too. Utah Sino is great. Alisino is a top tier dino, and Kencho as well. Rajakylo. The Indominus is good. Indoraptor is great, but they're just super hard to get. And if you're just gonna get two attempts on them, or not even two attempts, one attempt, two, and if you combine them, if you just get one attempt on them, that's not gonna help you create them.
I mean, it still helps. Takes hours to gather up the Velo DNA. It's going
Mm-hmm.
to take probably a solid week to get a fuse for most people,
Yeah.
not the hardcore people. So a chance to dart legendaries and uniques for them is like super exciting.
Oh, it
But
is.
they overlook the fact that Indoraptor's pretty hard to dart. It is extremely quick.
Mm-hmm.
They made it a little bit harder for dinos to flee with this last update,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sure if that actually expands past flyers or if it was just for them. But last time I only got a 50, and I think I'm a pretty good dart. I'm pretty good at darting. Let's put it that way. I don't know how else to
Darter.
phrase that really, but I only got a 50. Like it probably wasn't my best attempt ever, and there was like the screen flashing glitch and all sorts of other things at the time. But it's not easy, and I think Indominus Rex is probably going to be even harder. It shares animations with the Spinosaurus line basically for everything else. So if it's like that with darting, like Spinotiraptor and even Spinosaurus Gen 2 and stuff are some of the harder to dart things and the hardest to dart in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. A small interjection. I just opened my 6 hour free incubator and I got 20 Ankylosaurus DNA. Last time I got that was like 2 months ago. But yeah, Indominus Rex is going to be extremely hard to dart. It's like the legendary version of the Spinos. I've been darting Spinos for the event Spinos. I've got 12 out of 18 so far, but I they're so hard to dart. Like these are rare dinos. I averaged like around 180 on each of these the rare Spinosaurs, and I'm level 20 with a VIP, and I also consider myself a decent at darting, and these are really hard. Indominus, I mean, Indoraptor, I can't. Do you think its animation was more like of a croc like one?
I don't remember where exactly the spots were on it. I just remember it being super fast moving. Um,
Head, back, and tail.
was it head back and tail? Was it on like the tip of the tail or the base of the tail though?
Uh, I think it was like in the middle of the tail, a little towards the back.
So yeah, there's a lot of movement between the head and tail then. And then it like I said, it's extremely fast moving. It's not I feel like most of the proto crocs like Capro
Mm-hmm.
and Noonda are real easy, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like those,
Yeah.
except definitely turned up a couple notches. So, but also to expand on that, like compared to like the armor event, like Ankylosaurus is one of the easiest, if not the easiest epic to
Mm-hmm.
dart. So,
Yeah. But I mean, I guess there's really no way around it. Indominus Rex and Indoraptor, you know, they're both hard to dart, but Rex is also hard to dart. Velociraptor is easy to dart, but um, I mean, a lot of people don't really have a problem with Rex DNA. It's mostly Velociraptor DNA. If they're not me, I'm short on Rex. I got, I don't know, 90k or something Velociraptor. I just don't have any Rex. But yeah. Aside from that, Ankylosaurus is really, I feel, probably the easiest epic to dart. But then again, I haven't darted it in a while, so I might be misremembering.
yeah, it's that or Kula, I would say.
Yeah, it's one
Maybe
of those.
maybe Berry or Monolophosaurus,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like I don't know. Last time I did super well on Barry was right after we had Irritator week, so my thumb was just hitting all the direct hits. So
Yeah. Barry. Yeah, Barry for some reason is actually. I mean, I like before I've ever darted one, I thought it would be like super hard because it's a theropod. It has its long tail. It's quite thin, but it's actually really easy to dart. But yeah. Aside from that, going back to the point of the weekly dinos, yeah, just all things considered, unless you're like almost to unlocking Indoraptor and Dominus Rex, I really don't see another scenario where these two are better than the other option, 15 Sino or Anki. But I guess, I mean, I'm trying really hard to make it not seem that I think these two are bad, because obviously they're really good. But yeah, I just think the others are better. Not that they fit the Halloween theme at all.
it's definitely an exciting week. You can't deny that.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely not the best week that we've had.
Yeah. So.
There's a
Hmm.
there's one more issue I want to kind of glance over while we're talking about it. Still, is there's also the problem of if you give lower level players access to these dinos too early,
Hmm.
like arena battles for them are going to start being live or die by which player draws their higher level indom or their indo that's fresh.
Yes. Yeah, and it's gonna be over level compared to the rest of their team, which that's gonna suck for yeah your opponent. And yeah, that's gonna be a problem. People are gonna be, those who weren't aware of how strong Indo and Dom are, they're gonna be talking about it. I will, if you look closely at the forums, I'm pretty sure that that's gonna be a hot topic for the next few weeks. But anyways, I'm moving on to something else. So we've been speculating for a while that 2 months is up. They should probably have 1.5 soon-ish. We're still not getting it. I think they probably have to release it after the event. I doubt they're gonna announce it during the event. Like the Halloween's a big thing for them, and they don't really want to take too much away from it. So I think they're gonna announce it after Halloween. But anyways, let's talk a bit about some dino balances, buffs and nerfs. So let's start. Let's start with how about uniques? So uniques. First one, the big one, Indoraptor. Do you think they're gonna touch Indoraptor at all?
I don't think Indoraptor needs it. It's in a unique scenario where it can be anything in the game,
Yeah.
but it's not guaranteed to it. There's definitely some counterplay to it, despite the chance. Dodge is really frustrating, even with better nullers and like better dinos outspeed it with the last set of balance
Yep.
changes. But I feel like if they change dodge too much, that Endo might need something else to kind of. I like the spot that it's in.
Yeah. They've been having like surveys, and they've been talking to the community about RNG and stuff, specifically about dodges and stuns, crits, whatever. And I don't know. I have a feeling they're gonna change it just because how people react to it sometimes. When they always talk about when their Indo doesn't dodges and your opponent's dodging, and obviously that's always the case. Your Indo never dodges and there's always dodge. But yeah, I think they might touch it, but I personally don't think it should be touched at all. It's really good, and it could get encountered. Like if you're unlucky, your Indo is not going to do anything, and if you're super lucky, you could sweep your opponent's team. But these aren't random chances. These are, a set chances. It is 50% to hit through cloak or dodge, and your chances of hitting through that is 50%. I think that's quite fair. I don't see how it isn't, and I personally don't use nullifiers, and I never found dodges or dinos who dodge to be too much of a problem. There are, as you mentioned, quite a few decent counters. They're not guaranteed, but they have a really high chance. So I don't really think Endo should be touched at all. If they were to touch it, I don't even know how they would change it, other than doing something with dodge. Like everything else is, its stats are balanced. Yeah, it has a lot of counters despite being really fast. 128. There's a lot of 129 dinos. I don't really see why they're gonna touch that. So, anyways, another unique, which we see a lot of people talking about wanting to buff Trichosaurus. For some reason, a lot of people want to buff Trichosaurus. This is really confusing to me. Trichosaurus is extremely good. I really don't see why it needs a buff. Do you see any of that logic at all?
Absolutely no reason to buff Trico. It's definitely a solid dino. Although, admittedly, I will say, Ludia's logic, I think it was 2 patches ago, they mentioned with hybrids that their strength should be based on the rarity of their components.
Mm-hmm.
And Trico, I believe, is the only unique that uses nothing but epic DNA from like the base form, because it's Kintro and Anki for Ankintro, and then Ankintro plus T-Rex for Trico. So that's basically 3 epics that are going into it.
Yeah.
I don't think anything else has that same rarity. And so by their logic, that should be the best dino in the game. Obviously, they still have to leave it some counterplay because you don't want it to just be an auto win or anything like that. And I feel like it's in a good spot right now. It's a little bit trickier to use, I think, than people give it credit for. But if they realize that, then it's quite troublesome to deal with.
Yeah, that was a problem, they said about the rarity stuffs, and they kind of made it happen on Monometrodon, unfortunately. But other than that, I really don't see any other dinos really following that logic. uh, Indoraptor is one of the best dinos in the game, and it's just Rex plus Velociraptor, an epic plus a common. And you see other dinos like uh, obviously Monometrodon Stega DS. That's one of the best dinos in the game. It's a bunch of commons plus a Notosaurus. Yeah, I don't that part of the patch notes was really confusing. I mean, it made sense that uh how they were communicating it, but it didn't make sense in implementing it. I do not see it implemented at all at the
I
moment.
feel like it's a good goal, but yeah, it hasn't been implemented quite as well as it should have been. I feel like.
So yeah, I obviously personally I think Trigosaurus. I mean, they could buff it. Um, I, if they want to make it the most overpowered dino in the game, since it's all epics, give its HP to 5,000, damage move it up to like 1.9k, give it immunity, full counter, just make it absolutely ridiculous. But other than that point, I think it's pretty good at the moment. It's one of the better dinos in the game. It's not one of the best, but if you know how to play it, it's a pretty technical dino. People think it just chomps. No, it doesn't. It's quite it's pretty hard to play with. But yeah. Other than that, I really don't see any motive to really change it. So moving on to the ones that probably, or at least I think, need to be buffed is first. Let's talk about Tormalock. So Tormalock isn't a bad dino by any means. It has good speed, 126, and a lot of health, or 4.8k health. Damage is 960, so that's basically nothing. It does have a counter. I think it's a half counter, right?
Yes, half counter.
So sure, it does a bit more than, but it doesn't armor pierce, doesn't defend shatter. It's gonna get wrecked by any tank. And although on paper it seems that 126 speed is a lot of speed, but we're in a speed where the speed meta at the moment is, we're way past 126. 126 is like nothing. The only dinos that survive in this meta with 126 speed are the ones with priority, really, or some kind of cleansing mechanic. I think Tormalox does have that, but its damage really doesn't do too much. No, it doesn't have cleanse. I was thinking of something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just doesn't have the damage. I think they went a bit too overboard with the nerf there.
Definitely too far. They don't want to revert that nerf completely
Mm-hmm.
because that's also a mistake. It was at what, 1400 before?
Yeah, 1400.
I think a nice spot for it would probably be around 1200,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 11, between 1100 and 1200.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that ballpark. I'd have to look at numbers for it, but somewhere in that ballpark, I think would put it back into relevancy for sure. Oh, it would put it back in Apex. Let's put it that way. It's relevant now. It's so hard to create,
Yeah.
based on requiring Stiggy, and it kind of competes for the para-DNA from Trago. Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a bad spot for it to be, because right now I definitely say Trago's better. Stiggy is hard to get, and then Trijango, you can use it wherever. I don't feel like either of its hybrids are game breaking at this point, but we'll save that discussion, I guess.
All right. Yeah, I totally agree. Somewhere around 1100, 1200 should be good. I think 1300 is a bit pushing it. That's, with the counter, that's a lot of damage. That's going to be a bit too much. And with its, 4.8k health, it's going to be an absolute monster if you give it way too much. For Just on a visual note, for how many spikes and armor it has 0% armor, which really it really annoys
Yeah.
me.
I mean, it makes sense when you look at its components and realize that Django has no armor,
Mm-hmm.
except Django not having armor doesn't make sense in the first place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, again, those spikes should give it at least a little bit, maybe 10% armor and a slight damage buff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Or just trim its spikes. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Next one, your favorite Dwebble, Magna. We talked a bit about Magna last time, but let's just quickly go over it again since the episode's kind of gone now. Buff, you think?
Agnes perfect.
Really?
No, but actually, uh, okay, there's a couple ways they could go about buffing Magna.
Mm-hmm.
I see the most common one people are asking for is a HP buff. And
Yeah.
I think that is a huge mistake because if you just buff its HP outright,
Mm-hmm.
it's it's going to run over almost everything in the game.
Yeah.
Um, I think the smarter move is bumping it up to 129 speed to where it matches Kung Fu Parrot, Puritator.
Mm-hmm.
Then it gives it the edge in that Indo matchup, which it does fine in if
Mm-hmm.
they're even levels, except it's way harder to level than Indo. And it
Yeah.
also reduces its counters. It gives it a chance to go toe to toe with Dilorachiris, Puritator, Monomimus.
Mm-hmm.
It gives it a chance in those matchups, but it still loses. Like it would still lose to Stegod. That or if any of those things do outspeed it or outlevel it, they'll still two shot it. Or even things with instant charge like
Mm-hmm.
Utarinix. So it still has counterplay, but it opens it up and gives it more options without taking it overboard. And I think that's the best way to look at it.
Yeah, I would like for how hard Magna is to get and level up. It'd be nice to make it like the Indo counter. Just one dino that just 100% kills Indo. That would be nice. So, anyways, moving on. Let's talk a bit about Utarenix. Um, the other day in staff chat, I think was it Brian or Logan who brought it up. They thought Utarenix was a bit overpowered at the moment. It's strong. It is very strong, but I personally don't think it's overpowered. I think there's a lot of counter to it. There's quite a few counters to it actually, and I guess they can nerf it a bit, but I honestly don't know where they're gonna go about nerfing it. Which stat to bump down, what moves to take off, give it, or whatever. What are your thoughts on it?
It's the best dino in the game right now. Let's just get that out of the way right now.
Yeah, for
As
sure.
far as nerfing it, I don't know. Because if you take away from any one spot, like it really needs everything it has to keep it together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you nerf its HP, it's just gonna get like slowed and killed by things like Stegod with Thago, and then armor piercing the next turn it's able to move. Whether or not the stun lands,
Mm-hmm.
and then so that's kind of a rough spot, and then it just makes it like a slower Dilo or Kyrus kind of sorta,
Yeah.
which would just kind of be pointless. But if you nerf the damage at the same time, then it's just gonna kind of be there and not doing anything either. So I don't know. I think it's like I said, it's the strongest dino in the game. I don't think it really needs a nerf. If anything, buff how it looks. It could be a lot prettier.
At least make it as good as Utah Sino out in terms of looks. Obviously not
Or
stats
even
and stuff.
Draco Rex.
Or that would look weird. But anyways, I was thinking about changing its moveset, but when looking at it, I mean, I there really isn't too much to change. If you change impact to or distracting rampage to distracting impact, that's gonna mean it's not gonna do a lot of damage. Like you're just gonna use Utah Sino instead. Utah
I, f-
Sino. Uh huh.
I feel like an interesting thing they could go about with maybe change it to impact, shave
Mhm.
off a little bit of damage, like maybe 100,
Mm-hmm.
and let it retain swap in strike from Dracorex, because
Uh-huh.
there's nothing really at the higher levels aside from Diaraja that has a swap in ability. And I really like the idea of them, but they got to put them on good dinos.
Yeah, maybe that, or like even just looking at its toolkit, it has a distract, it has a stun, it has a run. So maybe even like swap in stun or swap in distract. Although Dracorex doesn't have it, but just from its move set and the option to have a swap in, they could throw one of those in too. But yeah, it's good, but it's still counterable. The big one being Dialoricyrus, and I'd say instead of nerfing Udorenix, maybe just buff more dinos, get more counters if people don't think there are enough counters. Um, buff Stegod. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I personally think we just need a bit more, or maybe a few more accessible counters, maybe um, a few one or two legendary counters or better legendary counters. I mean, maybe buff Trio's HP a bit, make it survive 2 hits. I don't know, but I guess that's just the course of action. So, anyways, moving on. Let's talk about a few legendaries before we finish this. Um, Stegadius. This one's gonna be a touchy one. I was always in the camp of don't really touch Stegadius, just make its ingredients hard to get, and they kind of did that already. But do you think it still needs a further a nerf than that?
Um, if it deserves another nerf, it should be a very slight nerf. Nothing big, nothing drastic. Should it should be one of the top two tanks in the game right now, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with it and the reason why everybody hates it is because, like you said, its ingredients were super accessible, so it got over leveled. If you had to deal with team level Stegod instead of, one that's 3 to 5 levels higher on average, it's really not that bad. Yes, it's very good. It's got a solid kit to like. It has options no matter what,
Mm-hmm.
but that's healthy for the game. Like it's like Indoraptor. I mean, sure, it's a legendary, so it shouldn't be quite that strong, but we're kind of lacking in good tanks if it's not there.
Yeah, and speaking of tanks, the legendary tanks, Giga Spike, Notapad, Titan, I think that's how they go, Trago, and Kensho. You think they're gonna buff any of those? I personally think they're probably gonna buff Giga Spike and Notapad Titan. Notapad Titan. Probably not in Kensho. They already buffed Kensho and Trago this round, and I think they're still extremely good dinos. Oh, another one I left out is Alan Kylo, if you want to call that a tank. It is quite tanky, I guess. It just doesn't look like one. But yeah, I think they're probably gonna buff Gigaspike and Notapad Titan and probably not touch Ankensho and Tragod. What do you think?
They definitely don't need to buff Ankintro or Tragot, I don't feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tragod's another one of those kind of issues like Stegod, where its ingredients were accessible for a time. Less so now because they're both tied, or several of them are tied to different locals rather than being global.
Mm-hmm.
But it's another one of those. It tends to be over leveled, and that's why it excels. Its speed tier's kind of odd for it, which I think surprises people still, even though you should know by now. And Kintro, I think, gives Stegod a run for its money as best tank in the game. It uses rarer components. It should be good, and I think it definitely is. I've been arguing with people left and right over this issue. It's a daily thing with me
Yeah.
because I swear by it. I think I'm the only one that still uses the dang thing up where I am in trophies, honestly. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a level 20 and it's hanging with my, level 23 or 24 average team. And I don't feel like it's a liability when I draw it. I like it. So
Yeah, I really like Hakentra too. I just wish I could level it up a bit more, but I'm already too deep in the tricle hole. I can't really stop now. I guess I'm a bit
Right. And that's
over.
another thing that hurts it.
Mm-hmm. So before we end, let's talk about two more dinos, and these two dinos are kind of weird. I think they're a bit forgotten. Probably not the other one, but at least one of these are. Is a Diloranosaurus and Monometron. These are kind of weird. These two legendaries. Diloranosaurus got hit really big this patch. It was one of the best dinos in game last patch, I'd argue. But it got hit pretty hard this patch. Do you think it needs a buff at all? And or do you think they're gonna buff it at all?
I wouldn't mind if it got a slight buff. Does it need it? Heck no.
Huh.
If you want another Utah Renix running around, sure, buff it, because that's basically what it is.
Uh huh.
um, last patch, last patch Dilorano was better than this patch's Utah Renix. It does more damage because it has two
Mhm.
impacts and a rampage, compared to Renix has basically two strikes. Granted, one is instant charge, so it has priority,
Mhm.
and an impact and a rampage. So it does more damage. It did more damage then. It's just as tanky. And even looking at it now, due to the difference in move sets,
Mhm.
it does almost as much as Utah Renix does now.
Yeah, it's only difference is it's 200 damage short and um you know one or not I guess 1.5 different moves. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Uh oh well Utarenix doesn't have superiority strike and Diloranosaurus has superiority strike, so that's that's another thing going for Diloranosaurus. But uh, obviously at higher levels you're probably not gonna invest too much into it because you're probably gonna dump your resources into Dilorachirus, which is I'd argue at the moment the second best dino in the game, but some other people might say otherwise.
Yep.
But yeah, it's really good. It has oops Siri. Uh, it's what the same HP as Uteran X
I believe so, yeah.
or
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, again, it suffers from competing. Well, you need its DNA to fuse Dilorachirus, which is something that hurts it. But I'm another one of those crazy people. I leveled it to 23 before the nerf,
Uh huh.
and I've been using it on my team. I don't think people realize how strong it still is. As an opening dino, it can go toe to toe with an Indo, and against Stegod, it takes out over half its HP and can flee to the next dino pretty safely. So,
Yeah, it's just because Dilorachirus is out, a lot of people has forgotten about Dilorano, but those who don't have it at level 20 yet, those people who are still, fighting at I really don't know the arena and what people use at each levels now anymore, but for those who are still using like level 17, 18 legendaries, Diloranosaurus is probably one of the better dinos in the game at the moment at that level. I think we kind of underestimated Dilorano when we were doing the tier list. It's still it's an alpha at the moment, but I'd see it at the worst is high alpha. It probably could be low apex. I'd say even like uh middle apex maybe even. I don't know if that's a bit pushing it, but yeah, it's still extremely good. Greater Sounding Rampage, obviously one of the best moves in the game. As distracting, he has a ton of health. 126 speed isn't the worst. It has its problems. Obviously, it doesn't have the instant charge that Utarenix has, but then again, it does have GS Rampage. And with all the 129 speed dinos running around, it it really works out well. Because they use a move. Obviously, you can either, depending if they're a distractor, you could go for a superiority strike, and if they're not, you hit them back with distracting impact, and then next turn you could give them a slower stun, which I usually always prefer over than a priority stun. So
Right.
yeah, it's and then you could run after that. It's a really great dino. So yeah.
I want to go on record saying I was one of those people still arguing it was Apex when we did this last tier list.
Oh, I
Yeah,
don't have too
so,
much memory of that. Well, good for you, I guess.
but yeah, like I said, the speed actually, like you were mentioning, it works out for it because it's slower than things like Endo.
Mhm.
So, okay, let's just, I'll use that matchup as an example real quick
Mhm.
just to kind of sh demonstrate the point. Okay, so that versus Endo starting out, even if Endo is, say, 2 levels higher,
Yep.
if it uses Cleanse first turn
Mhm.
and you distract it after,
Yep.
it doesn't kill you on that next turn with Rampage unless it crit one of those 2 turns.
Mhm.
So that's a good situation for you. If it tries to evasive, then you distract it. It's going to have to cleanse next turn, which means you're going to survive even if it does crit.
Mhm.
And then you get a chance to stun. Hopefully that hits since that's your big damage. But if not, next turn you get superiority, and then you peace out with impact and run.
Yeah, that one's 100% gonna hit
So
him.
yeah, and the impact and run is going to hit. It's going to take, roughly half of Endo's health, more or less. And,
Mhm.
hopefully your next Dino is willing to take the hit from it because it's going to.
Mhm.
But if you land any of the hits through the evasive, if it goes that route, the Endo's in a rough spot. So,
Yeah, it's it definitely works out in a lot of these situations against the it does it does what a lot of the other 126 dinos can't do. The other ones obviously being Utah Sino, Utah Renex, they don't have that stun advantage, although they do have priority stun, but that's a bit different. And they don't have a superiority strike to manipulate speed situations. So it's really great. Uh, I I wish I wish Dialer Cars looked like it a bit more, so I don't feel as bad as putting DNA into Dialer Cars. But yeah, other than that, I don't think they really need to touch it. If they do touch it, maybe 100 more attack or like 100 more HP. Like anything else is just gonna make it back to its you know, absolutely beast state in 1.3. So yeah, that's about Dialorano. So last one before we go, Monometrodon. This one's kind of a joke to a lot of people. People think, oh yeah, it's the worst legendary in the game. Oh, that's so funny. But uh, let's actually talk about it. It has I wouldn't say it's bad HP. It has okay HP, and 119 speed is curious. It's not 120, so you're gonna have problems with the Crocs and stuff. But um, yeah, it's problematic. Let's say it has a good move set. It just has nothing for base damage.
yeah. Okay, so touching on that. Health, it's passable.
Hmm.
Damage is definitely 100% its big issue. If they gave it 400 more damage, which
Hmm.
is in its case is times and a half its current damage,
Hmm.
that would be huge. It would be very usable at that point. And I think that's tied for the damage that Monolotho has, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not, unheard of since it's the hybrid of that and Diamond 2.
Hmm.
The 119 speed actually works out, and I'll explain that in a second. But its moveset's pretty good. Defense Shattering Strike, Distracting Impact, Defense Shattering Impact.
Hmm.
And then the reason I say the 119 speed's interesting is Nullifying Strike. Most of the big buff using dinos,
Hmm.
like Tristronics,
Yep.
Gorgo,
Yep.
they sit at 120 or higher. So since you're that one speed slower, you can null their buffs, which really hurts their game plan.
Yeah, that's a great point. And although um probably not for Tristronics, but for Gorgosukas, you could probably, one 119 speed and use distracting impact. So Their next move, they're probably not going to go for the shatter. They're probably have to go for cleanse instead, and that's not going to do obviously as much damage as the shatter. So yeah, that's a great point. 119 gives it quite a bit of counterplay against the 120 speed dinos, and obviously it has immunity. That's great. Moveset's great. Yeah, it just needs damage. It seems quite straightforward. It just needs a bit more damage. Not a bit more. I think it needs
A
substantial.
lot more.
Yeah, a lot more damage. But if it does get a lot more damage, it's gonna be great. But then, if it does become great, another problem's gonna uh come. It's a hybrid of Dime Gen 2, Mono Gen 2. And I've already been playing with a few people who have been using level 25, 26 Mauler Metrodons. They're not hard to beat at the moment, but if you do buff it up to a usable amount for damage, it's going to be like the new Stegod, maybe. And that's not going to be too fun for a lot of people.
Yeah, it would be an interesting case if they buffed it up too much. Um, Another fun thing to keep in mind, it's only a regular hybrid though, so we could see a super hybrid coming out of it, and maybe they'll make that good.
Yeah, maybe another
So,
unique hybrid with another common is going to be the ultimate free to play dino. That'll be fun. They're probably going to take Mono Gen 2 and Dime Gen 2 off of global spawns in the next patch, I think. They said it was
that's
temporary, and it's already 2 months.
yeah, that's how they played it up. They were talking about the cooler weather and such, fall rolling in, affecting spawn migrations, and that's why we were seeing them at the time it
Yeah.
released. And they've teased on Twitter, the forums, all over the place at this point, that they're going to be disappearing soon. And this was weeks ago that these things were coming out. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe if they buff it up after they disappear, it won't be as problematic since,
Mm-hmm.
it won't be super accessible. Play it safe. I would say, well, dart everything, but especially those two, because I think it might get some buffs or a new hybrid, honestly.
Maybe. I personally haven't been darting them at all. That's, shame on me. But yeah, I'm gonna dart more of the components from now on. That's a good reminder, I guess. I'm probably gonna be lacking behind if this ever becomes meta. That will be very unfortunate for me. But anyways, that's all the time we got for this episode. So we talked about a few buffs and nerfs we'd probably want to see, or we kind of speculated what Ludia is gonna do about them. I hope they balance some of these that we've talked about. Obviously, they're not gonna just listen to us and do everything that we just said, and they're obviously gonna cater to some other folks who have also voiced very loud opinions on certain dinos as well. But anyways, tell us what you guys think about these dinos in the comments down below. We'd really like to see what the Metaminute audience thinks about these, and hopefully we're gonna get the next patch soon. I have a bunch of DNA on my hands. I can't wait to spend them, but just too frightened to do so. And I'd advise you guys to hold on to your DNA at the moment. If you don't want to, oh well, I'm not your parents. But anyways, hopefully this video doesn't get taken down. Hopefully my channel doesn't get deleted by YouTube for some reason. Metaminutes are very unharmful. They're they're just me and someone else talking about Jurassic World Live. It's that shouldn't be something they're gonna be taking down. But anyways, that's it for this week, and we'll see you guys next time. That's gonna be a week from today, but we still haven't figured out a schedule yet, so it'll pop up whenever it'll pop up, and we'll see you guys then.